I'm saying something that might wake up some other exploited people and some other oppressed people, and if all these people ever get together, then these pigs that are exploiting us, we'll be able to run them into the lake. That's why they want to get rid of us. And it's just, it's sort of like a primary thing with me. I'm the first move that they'll make. I'm a part of the organization who will be the first organization they'll move on, because I happen to be a part of the organization, the Black Panther Party. That is the only organization, in fact, that has came out and stood up loud and clear and said that we don't care what anybody says, whether they have guns or not, and badges or 18 uniforms. If whenever they step outside the bounds of legality into the bounds of illegality, then we'll blow their brains out if they're bothering the people. And what makes them mad about that? They're constantly bothering the people. Anybody that's out there for the protection of the people happens to be in direct conflict with them. What makes them mad about it? What makes them mad about it is that they have black people and white poor people and red poor people and Puerto Rican poor people and Latin American Puerto Rican people of poor people of all descents. They had them caught up in movements based on racism when the Black Panther Party stood up and said that we don't care what anybody says. We don't think you fight fire with fire best, we think you fight fire with water best. We're going to fight racism, not with racism, but we're going to fight it with solidarity. We said we're not going to fight capitalism with black capitalism, but we're going to fight it with socialism. We stood up and said we're not going to fight reactionary pigs and reactionary state's attorneys like this and reactionary state's attorneys like Hanrahan with any other reactions on our part. We're going to fight their reactions where all of us people are getting together and have an international proletarian revolution.
Right on.
Right on. And that's saying all power to the people.
Right on.
That's saying that no matter what color you are, there's only two classes. And that's saying there's a class over here and there's a class over there. And the reason that this class over here has never did anything to get this class off its back, because this is lower, this is upper. This is the oppressed, this is the oppressor. This is the exploited, this is the exploiter. And these people in this class have divided themselves. They say, I'm black and I hate white people. I'm white and I hate black people. I'm Latin American and I hate hillbillies. I'm hillbilly and I hate Indians. So we fighting amongst each other. And you've heard the testimony of pigs here. You got pigs of all colors, you know that. You got pigs that are white, you got pigs that are black, you even got pigs that are black and white. Propagating the same type of madness that this buffoon Hanrahan would be propagating if he were here himself. And why? Because they want to keep you to believing that I'm your enemy, and that everybody else that's black and that wears a lot of hair on his head and hair on his face, they want to keep you thinking that he's your enemy. Why? Because if ever you would disregard him and overlook him just for a minute and throw away that question of racism and start into dealing with a little logic, then there would be no one else you could attack other than Hanrahan, other than Davy, and other than Tricky Dicky Nixon. If you make the right decision, then the oppressed people of the world will get complete satisfaction. I know you return a verdict of not guilty. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This video I'm about to put out there, I've wanted to do for a long time, but there's a couple reasons why I haven't done it. The excerpt that you just saw of Fred Hampton is something that basically compelled me to do this in the first place. If you do not know who Fred Hampton is, then look it up. There's a movie made about his assassination called Judas and the Black Messiah. But before that, I've watched many documentaries about him and about his assassination and things like that. Very charismatic leader of Black Panthers. Very, very polarizing figure in civil rights movement. And somebody who was quite dangerous had he lived to the status quo. I'll say that the primary reason that I did not make this video earlier is basically fear. And that fear was that my friends and family and clients that are white might think that by being pro-brown or pro-black or pro-colored people is anti-white. And, you know, I think that it's very safe to say that, you know, you cut the head off of something and the body will die. You cut the leadership off of something like the Black Panthers, and it's assumed that something like that might die. Now, as an organization, the Black Panther Party did many great things, and of course, J. Edgar Hoover declared them, public enemy number one in regards to national security, deemed them as a terrorist organization. While the KKK is still alive to this day and flourishing, it's not going anywhere ever. Being pro the progression of people of color is definitely not against white people, unless you're just weak-minded. And if you're weak-minded, you could stop watching this video and unfollow me or whatever you need to do. Whatever feels comfortable. But what's really interesting about my ethnicity, if you will, is that, or my family's ethnicity, I guess, is that my children are more European blood than anything, but their names are, of Mexican descent, Lopez. But my wife, Rochelle, is, her dad is 100% Filipino. Her mom is German, and I believe there's some Polish blood in there too, maybe Irish blood, but they're European. So you got Rochelle, who is half Filipino, half German. And then you have me, who's, my mom is half Portuguese, right? So I'm 1/4 Portuguese, and then I'm Mexican. And if you looked at my family, my dad's side of the family, especially, there's probably no way that there's any kind of Spanish or European blood in there, because by and large, they're very short people. My two older children, Samantha and Nathan, their moms, Filipino and German as well. So her dad, I believe, was, her grandfather was, I believe, half German and half Filipino. Mom, full Filipino. So there's a lot of German blood in our Lopez family. So we live in a place where your skin color and your last name could kind of be held against you. And, Fred Hampton, in the video that preceded this portion, said that they try to fight fire with water. So they try to fight racism, not with racism, but with solidarity, right? Now, it's February, it's Black History Month. Like I said, felt compelled to do this because mainly somebody asked me about 3 weeks ago, who was the most influential Black person that I, because of the topic for February, who would I say is the most influential Black person? And the first two names I said was Fred Hampton and Malcolm X. And he pondered this for a minute or so, and he goes, "What about MLK?" And I was like, that's kind of weird. He goes, "You didn't even say Obama." And I go, well, their approaches were different. I don't really feel like Obama really did anything for people of color or Black folks, if you will, during his administration. And I'm definitely open for a conversation about this. That being said, if anybody leaves any kind of bullshit comments, I'll just delete them, because I'm not here for a fucking childish conversation. I'm here for real talk. I'm not here for banter and worthless words. I'll just delete them. I'm not gonna have any part of that. And then MLK, I believe towards the end of his life and towards his realization of what was happening, he talked about integrating his people into a burning house or burning building. or words or something like that. I didn't check out that quote, but it basically, he's showing that for all of the things he's trying to do for equal rights and civil rights, it's just a big mess still, there's a lot of things happening in the news. Today is the 8th of February, 2022, and the things that's dominating the news are Russia and China coming together to possibly go up against the United States. The Olympics are on, and then there's coronavirus, right? But what's really happening out there is tons of things happening in other parts of the country that have to do with racism, police brutality, white people shooting unarmed black people, no-knock raids by white police against black people, and things like that. All the isms, sexism, racism. Then you have pedophiles. You have this Maxwell case where her client list is the high-profile Hollywood people and politicians, and that's not ever, nobody's talking about it. Like, it's not even in the news hardly at all, because the news is run by the media, and the media is a source of entertainment, and so they're not going to implicate themselves, and they're definitely not implicating politicians, because that's where all the power lies. So there's that big distraction of coronavirus. We're still talking about this shit. And yes, it kills people. Yes, it's a real thing. But what's killing people and always will kill people is racism. And not necessarily racism itself, meaning lynchings and stuff like that. But I'm talking about the spirit of a person. So there is racism in this country. I went to school, a private Catholic school, from first grade all the way through 12th grade. And what's really, really interesting is that you can consider where I grew up, the hood, I guess. But I never felt like it because I didn't think that it was anything abnormal. Our house was relatively clean. We went on vacations. We went, our house was clean. We went on vacations. We had clean clothes to wear that fit. My grandparents had money. I guess you could say their house was like, to us, was like a palace. I'm talking about my mom's side. And when we went to friends' houses that had more money than us, we just thought, wow, this is a nice house. We were never, I really couldn't tell you that I was ever mistreated by anybody because of my race. And maybe I just have this false memory, but, if you go to private school, some people have more money, some people have less money, but everybody's in the school together. You see cars in the parking lot that your friends are driving away in when you're a kid, and maybe the cars are a little bit shinier, but you don't have, unless you're taught it, you're not really thinking about racism or thinking about classism at that point. Only in high school did I notice that, wow, that kid's driving a BMW, it's 1984, 85, and some kid's driving a $30,000 car. And back then, that's a lot of money for a junior or a senior to be driving. There were kids driving $80,000 cars that were theirs. I went to houses that were gigantic and nice, and made, the people that lived there were of all walks of life, Mexicans, blacks, whites, whatever you want to call it, people from all the different color wheel and everywhere in between. And then I had friends who, like my parents, were working class people, and we needed help from my grandparents to get our tuition to get through those schools. I was aware that I needed money. I needed to have a job to have the money to go do the stuff that some of my friends might have had just because their parents gave it to them. But I hung around with some kids who had a giant trust fund, and they would just go to the ATM and get money out, and we never exploited them, and they never made us feel like we should be lucky to hang around with them. We just went and bought beer. We didn't give a shit. We bought some Miller Genuine Draft and went and drank at the wherever the party was, or in the back of a parking lot, or in the back of somebody's car, whatever. We're all friends, from so many different classes. And these guys would come to I remember when I went to boot camp, my mom threw a party for me, and all these guys from all different walks of life, all different levels of income and status, they all came to my mom's house for the party. It was a fucking awesome party. People were drinking and crying and throwing up and all the things you'd expect from a going away party when I joined the Marine Corps. But again, I never felt race. I never felt the classism. I was aware that there's some people with more money, but I never felt like I was being persecuted or hounded or bullied because of that. And maybe it's just because we were kids and, we didn't care. We grew up in an era where hip hop was just coming up. And, Run DMC was huge. Beastie Boys were huge. Hip hop was, some people would mess with us because we wore thick shoelaces in our shoes, but otherwise, it's cool. Everybody's cool. Join the Marine Corps and you start to see a little bit of it. You saw some racism between certain types of Mexicans from certain parts of the country against blacks, typically because of the neighborhood they grew up in. They brought that attitude with them, and I did definitely see that. Did I ever feel like a person of authority who was white treat me poorly because I was Mexican? I would say only towards the end of my time in the Marine Corps. There's a couple of people that I worked with or for, or that were not necessarily my boss, but they were within the power structure, that they definitely exhibited racist behavior, but it never got in my way. It was only until I got into the working world and got out of the Marine Corps and was a civilian again that I started to see it more. I guess it became a thing that I could see frequently. And the funniest thing was that because of who I am now and who I was at the time, I would put these people in check because I never was afraid of like that I had somebody over me. Like I never saw people that were white as people that were superior to me by virtue of the fact that I grew up around all kinds of people. So there's people who were working class that were white who were going to St. Anthony's and Santa Clara School. There were people that were black and Mexican and white who were rich. Their parents were wealthy and they had big houses and they had badass cars and they were my friends too. So I didn't see a class war. I never really saw that. But I remember one time at a car dealership I was working at, a guy who was white was talking about the Mexicans that were working in the service department and how this one particular Mexican who's lazy and thought he was hot shit. And, that's how Mexicans are. And I said, what's really funny about what you said is that if the owner would hear you say that, you probably would get fired, because are you aware that the owner, whose surname is obviously Anglo white name, you realize that's his brother-in-law. The Mexican you're talking about is his brother-in-law, who is the brother of this man's wife, who is Mexican. And here's her surname. And then those two people, the kids of the owner, you realize that they're half Mexican and that all of his grandkids are of Mexican descent. So it'd be awesome if you were to go tell that to the boss. I'm sure he'd love to hear that. And the color of the guy's face just fucking fell out. It was awesome. And people in the room with us, we were actually in the showroom of the dealership, some of them were like, ah, and some of them just put their heads down and smiled and walked away. But the guy was mortified. And he made a judgment on race and color right then and there. And the guy definitely apologized. He was embarrassed, and he learned a lesson that day. When I was training with 24 Hour Fitness, there was a couple of clients who try to act in a certain way. And I said to them on more than a couple of occasions, I would say, I know I look like the guy who cleans your pool. I know I look like the guy who cuts your lawn, but that's not who I am. I'm the guy who trains you, and I know more than you about this subject. So if you don't want to train with me, you can go get another trainer. You can talk to my boss, but you're not going to talk to me like that, and you are going to respect me. And of course, the same thing would happen. Color drops out of their face. They're absolutely mortified, and they're like, "Oh no, that's not what I meant." And I go, "It's okay. It is what you meant. It is what you meant. It doesn't matter to me because you're not hurting my feelings. I know who I am. I'm not a good trainer because I'm a good trainer for a Mexican. Just like currently, I'm not a great trainer or a great bait maker for a Mexican. I'm not a pretty good gym owner. I don't have a nice gym because I'm pretty good for a Mexican. No, I have good client base. I make an amazing product. It has zero to do with that. I'm okay for the color I am. I'm okay, period. I'm good, great, period. So I think what has happened is that somewhere along the line, I didn't need anybody's help standing up for myself because something happened inside of me, or I am somebody within me that doesn't tolerate this. But I am the minority in that. Because I come from a gigantic family of over 1,000 of just on my dad's side alone, and I don't even know on my mom's, it could be a few hundred, maybe several hundred. I've been to a lot of funerals, more than most people would ever go to, because I have a big family, right? And also weddings. There's also good, of course, but I also go to weddings. And you go to a wedding, you go to a funeral, and there's somebody that's not there. You all have a favorite cousin or whatever, and you're like, "Well, where's this guy? Oh, he couldn't go. He couldn't be here. He had to work." Now, unless you picked up some kind of crazy shift at the hospital, the fire department, at the firehouse, your police officer, or you're one of those kind of people that goes away for work, having talked to some of these people on the phone after they missed the funeral, how come you weren't at the funeral? How come you weren't at the wedding? You talk to them on the phone, they're like, "I couldn't get off work." I'm like, dude, how long have you worked there? I've worked here for 5 years, worked here for 10 years. You mean to tell me that you're in such a position that your fear of losing your job as a 40-year-old guy, as a 50-year-old man, losing your job because you went to a funeral for one of your favorite aunts, you missed the wedding of one of your favorite people on earth, one of your cousins, for fear of getting fired? How did that fucking start? How did you get to a point where somebody put their thumb on you and said, "This is your position here"? Because I've never been that way. When I was in the Marine Corps, good or bad, whenever somebody put their thumb on me, I bit that motherfucker. There's no way. When I was at 24 Hour Fitness, they tried to do that shit to me. No way. When I was working for car dealerships, no way. I'd rather take a pay cut than lose my dignity. And I don't know if I hope I'm using this word right, pervasiveness of racism, it has to be because of tradition. It has to be because of some sort of inherited less than thought. For the same reason why a lot of people hate on each other when they're succeeding. I've seen it in my culture where people who start to make more money and they go to school and or they start a business and they start to flourish, people suddenly are, oh, they think they're better than us. And I say maybe they are, because they don't want to hang out and talk shit about everybody who's not at the barbecue. They want to ditch that. It's no good. They don't want that anymore. They want to succeed, and they want maybe everybody else to succeed. But it's this kind of infighting that's based on fear, that's based on less than, that then nobody stands up for themselves, because they can't even stand up for themselves at the house. They can't even stand up for themselves when the dad is being an asshole and somebody wants to say, hey, Dad, you need to stop being an asshole. When the boys could do whatever they want and the girls are like, still living at home when they're 24 because they won't let them move out. And, they the list goes on in the culture. So what do? You never really advance. You never really learn how to think critically. You don't know how to discern. The cycles repeat themselves. Somebody has a dad who's an asshole, a mom who's an asshole, and they just find people like that. They just find the same type of people, and they stay in the same neighborhood, and they never move out. They never make any more money than the last person did. And everybody who wants to get out of the hood or wants to make more money and fix up the house that they live in, oh, they think they're better than us. That's why they're fixing up the house. Who needs that much? Who needs an expensive stovetop? Who needs to have nice grass in the backyard? Why don't you just do it like we did? The list goes on and on. But that's still not an excuse for the stuff that's happening out there and not being acknowledged. If you are of color and you're watching this video, start reading some history books. Find out who your people were. Find out who the movement. Find out about the movements that were out there. Find out about what happened with farm workers. Find out about the Black Panther Party and the Rainbow Coalition. Find out about J. Edgar Hoover. Find out about all these things, why people of color are always oppressed, why they allow themselves to be oppressed, why it is that hip-hop music or rap music, it's only violence against each other. I mean, I can't really believe that we're still in a stage where it's gotten worse. Hip-hop has gotten worse. There's rappers getting killed almost every week. These people are coming up and they're getting killed. They're still in that same, it's become even more thuggish, even worse than it was back in the NWA days, right? So it's like fight amongst each other. And then when somebody comes up and rises up and wants to do something different, like your Tupac Shakurs and your Nipsey Hussles, somehow they get killed in some odd drive-by somebody within their circle or somebody else's circle. When they start waking people up and they go, you know what, I was wrong for these years. Let's start uniting. Solidarity, they're gone. As long as they're rapping about killing each other, everybody's happy. But once you start saying, you know what, let's not do this. Let's just truce. Let's advance together. They end up dead. And that's real. People ask, what can I do to help with racism? What can I do? What can I go? And what I mean by that is people who are white. So here's what I say to you. If you really do care about racism and you want to change it, then you change your circle. So whenever somebody says derogatory terms about, they say wetback, or they say something like immigrant or whatever, and they're white and your white friends do this, check them. First of all, if you're indigenous to this land like I am, there's not one person in my whole entire family from generations way gone by. Not one of us have ever been an immigrant unless they came from some other country. But you cannot be an immigrant if you're Mexican. You cannot be a Native American and be an immigrant to Canada. You can't be a Native American and be immigrant to California or the United States. You could be a migrant, but you can't be an immigrant. It's impossible. It's impossible to be an immigrant on stolen land unless you come on a boat from another continent. But otherwise, you're a migrant. So anyway, if you who are white and you want to get involved, when somebody says wetback around you, you say, you need to chill. Don't talk like that in front of me. Right? Somebody says the N-word around you, you're like, nah, dude, chill out. Don't talk like that in front of me. If you're at their house, you get up and you walk. You get up and you walk. They start saying racist stuff. You're like, ooh, yeah, we're out of here. What are you talking about? The game just started. Yeah, but you know what? When your other friends show up for this game or when your other family members show up to this game, I don't want to be guilty by association that I'm like you because I'm not like you. So you need to regroup. Maybe we can hang out again, but you definitely need some talking too because that don't fly with me, right? If you're at their house, if they're at your house, you need to ask them to leave. You need to ask them to leave. And if you don't think there's anything wrong with it, then you probably haven't even watched this far. Because, I mean, obviously, if that talk ever happened in my house, I'd just be like, you gotta go. Sorry. I didn't know you were like this. But of course, nobody would say that around me, I don't think. Not in my house. I live in California. It's not that bad here. It happens, of course. I live in Ventura. There's a lot of people proudly flying Confederate flags here and there. And you see people with Kentucky license plates and stickers on their shirts, and they wear shirts. And I see these people at my kids' school. And I know of people who are Asian who try to start clubs in schools in Ventura, and there were swastikas and death threats and all that stuff. And that's in good old Ventura, where there's Mexican restaurants everywhere, and there's people eating burritos and shit like that all the time. And there's so many different mixes of people, yet the racists are still around, still teaching their kids, still influencing the next generation of racists. And like Fred Hampton said, he wants to fight fire with water. He wants to fight racism with solidarity. And let's hope that that is what happens. Because everybody loses if we ever have to fight fire with fire. If we ever have to protect ourselves to the point, or things get to the point where we really do fear for our lives the way some of these racist piece of shit cops say they feared for their lives when they shot some guy in the back. It's hard to observe when you're not of color. It's hard to observe when you've never been on the other end. And like I said, I'm a strong person. I step to it. If somebody wants to come at me with it, I step to it. I do not hold my tongue or be polite because of where we're at. I bring it. If you want to bring it to me, then I'll oblige you. But not everybody's like me. Some people, they need that job. They have to have the job. Some people, they're in a relationship where they're so far gone into it that if they said something, they might have to move back in with their parents. They just don't want to be that guy that makes a big deal. They don't want to keep it too real, like Dave Chappelle, when keeping it real goes wrong. They don't want to be that guy. I'm not saying to go nuts. What I'm saying is when people start chipping away at you, you got to deal with it. You got to deal with it when it's time. If somebody picked the wrong time or an awkward time to say some kind of racist thing, then the floor is open for you too. Let's fight racism with solidarity. Because God forbid we ever have to use fire. If you watched this far, thanks for watching. Feel free to share and watch your comments, because we're grown here and we want to have a good conversation. Take care.